What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Stereotherapy. I'm your host, Lisa. Of course, my co host over here is Justine. And this is episode 92. Today in the show, we were joined by podcast alum, second time on our podcast, Chisa Marie, but her artist name is Chisa. And it was so great because the first time around that I spoke with Chisa was the very first time that we launched this podcast before the revamp what it is now. And it was so great to keep in touch with Chisa and see that she was doing new music and having her reach out. She wanted to come on the show. I wanted her on the show and just talking about her new music and the subject matter of it. And we dive right in. So just a little bit of a trigger warning. We do touch on domestic violence and relationship trauma. So keep that in mind. But it is such an important conversation surrounding those topics. And I admire Chisa's bravery enough and vulnerability to come on here and want to. And also think this was a safe space for that conversation because the relationships we have with others do affect our mental health and they can become our mental health. So it is so important to have conversations like this. And I really love that I felt like I was just talking to a really old friend about something and less of a podcast. And I feel like as we go in these episodes, that's what it feels like every time I come in here. I never feel like it's like an interview. I feel like we're just having conversations, and I absolutely love that. And this episode was exactly that. As always, all links below. Go check out Chisa. I don't want to take up any more of your time. So here's my conversation with Chisa. To have you on because like I saw you had new music and I'm like this, especially Pray for Rain, like what it's about. I'm like that's like music and mental health. That's mental health. And we haven't really had a conversation about that. So like I'm so excited, but a question we ask everybody to start it off is what, if you can remember, are your first memories of falling in love with music for you? Whether it's an artist, a record, a place you were in, anything like that?
Well, this is where I sell myself out as a musical theater nerd. I remember being probably somewhere between the ages of like 3 to 5, maybe, and I'd be at my grandma's house because she used to be a jazz singer, so she'd always put like records on while we were cooking and stuff. So the one that I immediately clung to for dear life was the Cats stage recording, like of all the the songs, like the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. And Andrew Lloyd Webber is just like a genius, and some of the things he does with music are just like so phenomenal. And that's one of my favorite parts about that show is just like the music. And that would be my first like earliest thing, but like I remember in terms of more of like a modern context, in kindergarten somebody came up to me and was like, "Have you heard the new Britney Spears album?" And I was like, "Huh? Who's that?" Because I was like 5 or 6 maybe, and I remember just listening to Oops, I Did It Again like front to back and like having it in my Walkman on repeat like incessantly. Just it's like, I'd like get my little like toy headset and I'd be making up little dance routines, to all some good old Brit. So that was definitely the start of it for me.
Oh yeah, Britney Spears, as much as like some people don't want to, or whether they don't want to admit it, like she was so big even for me. Like even though I ventured away from pop for a long time, but I remember I wanted to be Britney Spears for Halloween because like Baby One More Time,
I still want
and
to be here for Halloween.
I
Are you kidding
know,
me?
like like even like especially Toxic. I was like, I want to be that. And like at 16 years old, I had no business wanting, or should be in that like red latex outfit or anything. But like,
Right,
sh
maybe not the most child-friendly outfit, but like it's
no,
fine.
but she's just so still like she's and like reading her memoir and everything she
I
went
just got it. I'm
through.
so excited to read it.
Oh
It's
my
up there on my
gosh.
bed. If you can see that little book
Oh,
right there,
oh
that's what
my
that is.
God. So no spoilers. But like for
I
me,
mean, I have the internet, so like I've been
so
spoiled, but like of the big plot points. But I'm really excited to kind of dive into that because I think it's so easy for us as like normal people to glamorize what these people's lives look like when they're on top, and it comes with a lot more struggle and strife, and a lot more of it is smoke and mirrors than any of us even really think. So it's always good to be able to like peel back the curtain and like to take somebody off of a pedestal and view them as like a human and not just like a mogul.
it really made me think because I fell off the Britney Spears train. And then like reading it, I was just like, wow, I remember that. I remember that. And now I think differently, like us as people watching it and watching her go through with Kevin Federline and all of that. And like just being like, wow, even me, like back then, oh, she's kind of crazy. But then not realizing like, why would I say that? Like everything she's been through, like she's like just, and then I believe she is bipolar. She's bipolar disorder. And it's one of those things of like just kind of checking myself. Why did I immediately be like, oh, well, she's crazy because she shaved her head? And then in reality, in my 30s, I'm like, I've had moments where like I have probably would have like just, I don't even know how I would have reacted if I was her and her level of fame and the men in the industry, just everything. I'm like, oh, it just really made me like open my eyes to be like myself, but then also like the music world and how just awful it is.
Well, it's wild how we as a society will run with narratives if the media spins it a certain way. And like the reality is none of us know these people on a day-to-day basis. We don't know what they're actually going through. Like look at how much like came out after the fact, like the conservatorship and everything. Like so many people are crack in those situations, yet it's so easy to be like dismissive and to like almost put our allyship aside for like mental health advocating when it comes to like somebody that's like Britney Spears. Like it's so easy to like forget what it is to be human and to like have sympathy for people who suffer with these illnesses and stuff.
It just opened my like, yeah, just I had so much like just at the end of it, like sympathy and almost like just and even like pop stars today. Like you look at someone like Billie Eilish that's larger, Chappell Roan, who's like taking off in like larger than life, and the way people even react to her. I'm like, it still is a problem. But oh my gosh, Britney Spears is just, oh my
I
gosh, you'll
can't
love
tell
the
if it's
book.
better or worse now because of social media, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's probably a lot louder and a lot more like volume and numbers, I think, because like we as consumers weren't really part of the discussion until the like invention of things like Twitter and I'm still gonna continue to dead name that site till I'm dead, but
Oh, I know. Yeah.
like
I
who's next? Don't know her.
Yeah, of like, and I mean, even like talking about mental health, I mean, even being a musician and having music out, we are in the world of TikTok. Like everyone we talk to, it's like that's how you have to push your music. Social media in itself is such a just an issue on your mental health. I mean, I go through it too, where I'm almost like I want to delete everything and just be done. But like then I'm like, oh, I can't because I keep in touch with people and even like the podcast. But for you, how is social media, whether it is TikTok or anything, any way of you putting out your music, how has that kind of affected your mental health?
I have been very acutely aware of kind of my brain chemicals and like kind of my brain just in general since I had a concussion. Like I kind of feel like I can feel the workings of my brain and like when I'm like getting flooded with like dopamine and serotonin versus like when I'm in withdrawals. Like I kind of can clock that for myself, like physically how that feels. So I've definitely had points where I feel like the chemical dependence on social media. And also I think as a musician, you're always gonna feel like it's never enough effort. So it's always gonna be like there's always more I could be doing. And so it does turn into like a shame point almost of like, and I think Chapel like talks about it really well of being like, this is an industry where if you disregard yourself and your health, you do better. I think it's really easy to throw yourself under the bus and not do what's in your best interest. And I think it's really important to find a balance between like a sense of obligation with social media and also like what you personally can handle as a human.
That's why I respect Chapel so much for saying like, hey, I need a break. Or like her fans even too, right? Like, hey, you guys need to like that parasocial, like just step off, leave my family alone, do all that. And I love
Seriously,
that
that's going too
she's
far.
advocating so much because I think so many, it's like you said, like it's almost like, well, the people that, I guess, quote unquote, like sucked it up or whatever they want to say, people don't have anything to say about them because they're just silently dealing with it. But like, that's not good either, and allowing it to go on. But it's like someone like Chapel Roan, when I see her on social media and just being like, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. Any rant or anything, I'm like, this is why I'm glad. And she's so young too. So it's like amazing to see someone that young be like, no, like I'm not gonna be like this. This is not how it's gonna go. And take it or leave it. And I'm like, yes, we have someone like she's way more outspoken than even me in my 30s. I'm like, I don't think I was that. I know I wasn't that outspoken like about my boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, well, she's a Sagittarius moon, as am I, so it takes one to know one. I think that is a sign that has a very real possibility of being brash and honest, almost to a fault. But I think it works for her, and I have so much respect for her for that. Because as a woman, like again, we're so expected to diminish our needs and our boundaries and like what our safety even and like compromise it for people's enjoyment. And I just don't think that needs to be a part of that as a job title. Like,
Yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast. And I'm sure there's some out there that like talk about that because it's, yeah, just being a woman these days is it's so hard. And obviously like our podcast too is the importance of music. And I know an important artist for you is Andrew McMahon. He's in so many projects, whether it's The Wilderness, Jack's Mannequin, something corporate is back, which I'm so excited, but I haven't
oh,
seen them
the best
yet.
summer of my life. You haven't seen
Oh,
them yet?
no,
Oh.
I saw them. I saw them like I mean, it was years when they were first around. I haven't seen them on these reunions because it's sold everywhere. Like it is sold out. And it's like so crazy because it's like I want to go so bad, but I'm so happy they're selling out because like that's amazing. All these people that maybe didn't get to see them. I would like to know for you, like which one of his projects do you think you resonate the most with?
Hmm. I mean, right off the bat, I'm like Jack's Mannequin was like my introduction to him. And just like I think he did such a beautiful job during that era of highlighting what adversity and like triumph in the face of that looks like. And so I connected to his music the most because of that. I think there's always been threads of that through all of his projects, but probably Jack's. I think because I think so much of like those albums saw myself in, you know what I mean? Like a lot of those themes. And I think a lot of people who are fans of him can relate to this of just like the themes of transit and like this idea of like coming of age and like losses in our life and like oh my God, I could write a whole thesis on it. I'm like struggling to even like think of where to begin with that, but that's to answer the question, it'd probably be Jax.
For me, like I loved something corporate. Like that was my gateway to him. But then like it to me it was Jax because that's like when I was going to art school. It was just like hearing the song like I'm ready. And it was almost like this was just everything to me at that point in my life. And I just felt like, wow, like I was so excited to see him branch out and have something different that I felt like grew with me because like obviously as a teenager something corporate was like everything and just that but there was something special about Jack's Mannequin and the tones in that record and just yeah, I have not listened to it forever. And like the other day we were talking about records and like, I have not listened to Jack's Mannequin in forever. I need to put it back on. And I was like, this is so good. I know everybody's excited about something corporate and like you should be because it's amazing and I'm so excited. But like they're so and like, I almost felt like the new something corporate song was it sounded almost similar, like almost a mix of his like I don't know, Jax and something corporate. Like it or like even in the wilderness, it wasn't like where something corporate left off, which I was really excited to hear. I'm like, oh my, I can almost hear like everything he was a part of in this new song.
I think he's such a good case study too for like evolution as an artist and like being able to pivot when you feel the direction and time is right. And again, I just feel like it's so full circle for him to see in the SoCo and like also to see everybody like just so happy at these shows has been like one of the biggest like blessings of this year for me. Like it's just been so much like secondhand joy I've gotten to witness that yeah, I'm like you can just like not bring the wilderness back. You should just stay in your SoCo era a little bit.
Yes, yes. And then like it when they came here, I could not believe how quickly it sold out.
I
I
know, I
thought
don't
for
get that
sure.
feeling. It makes me so sad. I wish I could have
Oh,
caught a show. You need to come
I
to Red Rocks.
I know. Oh, that is a bucket list going to Red Rocks. That has been always since starting like going to shows. I was like, I have to go here. Like there were certain venues and now in New Jersey, like the Stone Pony was another one. And now like I've been there. So it's like, oh my gosh, I'm here. But Red Rocks is just one of those ones that like I don't know. I don't know who would be the perfect artist, but
Anything, any show,
just
like even if you, the thing that like we say as Coloradans is like it doesn't matter who's playing, like it's always going to be a good show regardless.
oh,
But yeah, I've seen some of my favorite bands in many a context, but it's always like Red Rocks is just like such a special venue that, and it's just like something about the energy and the vibes there, and just like everybody's there for the same purpose, and like I don't know, it's such a beautiful place and culture and scene, and I could not speak highly enough about it. It's so near and dear to my heart.
it's so amazing to hear that because like for me, it's like, oh, this is bucket list. This is Red Rocks. This is so this. But
And then
to
I'm like, and
know
my high school graduation was at Red Rocks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
oh,
such like it's home for me in a sense. Like, it's definitely part of that.
oh, that's so cool. Oh, yeah, my high school graduation was in a gym. So I mean, you know what? Like a
I'm
little
sure my
gym.
feet would have preferred that because, like, I remember I ended up walking up and down the steps 3 times in heels, like doing the whole hike, and that's it's not easy in flat shoes. So
No.
heels is a whole nother story.
Oh, even flats, I like even like just thinking about that. I remember like you saying it was an easy hike, but like for me, I made the mistake one year I went to Riot Fest and I wasn't going to get in the crowd. So I wore my little flats. I was like, oh, I'm going to be, cute. Worst decision of my life. I think I was like caught in a Fall Out Boy crowd and the flat flew off. I'm like, that's it. That's like, so now like no matter what I do, I'm like, no, I don't even care about being cute. I'm just gonna wear like sneaker, like whatever I can.
Footwear is so essential to be smart about with concerts. That's the main thing that I've learned growing up, because I'm a little bit more smarter about my shoe choice.
Oh my, yeah, and like that was like what 2015. So now when I go, I don't even care. Like I just saw Newfound Glory a couple months ago, and I'm already like, no, I'm wearing these sneakers that tie up, they won't come untied. Like I know. Just I'm like, yeah, if I could tell my like 2013 or 2015 self, whatever it was, like, don't worry about being cute. If you're gonna go in the crowd, you're gonna do that. And yeah, no. But I mean, obviously, we have to talk about your latest song, Pray for Rain. And I'm so excited to talk about this because, again, like music and mental health, we haven't really had a song about this subject matter or just something so vulnerable. So for you, I mean, I know you said if it can make one less person feel alone, it's worthwhile. And for you, or whatever you feel comfortable about, what are you most proud of about having this song out right now?
Well, I feel this way about the whole album because it's a concept album about this abusive relationship that I went through, and so Pray for Rain is just like one little snippet of this entire project. And so I think my feelings for it are very reflective of like my feelings for the project as a whole, and a lot of it centers around like themes that I wish I was strong enough to have said or done while I was going through this relationship, you know what I mean? Because so much of my safety was compromised during when I was dating this person. When I was living in LA, I didn't have locks on my doors, so like I felt very unsafe.
Yeah.
So it took me getting to be in a safer location and like not being stalked by him to be able to express these things and like things that I'd never told anybody. Like I didn't talk about the things I was going through while I was going through it. And it took me another 2 years after the fact to really even be like, yeah, that's what I went through.
Mhm.
So I think it's such a beautiful gift to be able to have a medium to transmute the like pain and darkness of things, because like as a human you're not immune to negative experiences and emotions, and so being able to have a safe way to channel and process that is so invaluable. And like just the craft of songwriting means more to me than it ever does because of the process of this album. And there was so many nights when I was making it because I wrote the whole thing myself. I produced and mixed and mastered everything. So I've been sitting with this project for a minute, and like even like years after the fact, there would still be days where I'd sit down to work on it and it would just like hit me in a certain way, and I would just be like on my keyboard, like right here, like you can't see it, but I have my
Yeah.
keyboard right here and my guitar. I would just be like working on something, and then it's like something in me would just crack and I would just start like sobbing, and I like wouldn't be able to finish like my work for the day that I wanted to do on it because it would just the emotions were still so raw and real for me, you know what I mean? And I've noticed this thing happen with my brain and music, that if I hear something that I correlate with a certain memory or a certain time period, like every time I hear that song I can picture all of the times I've ever heard that song. And so it's really easy for me to get sucked back into those memories sometimes, like working on this. But I finally feel like I'm at a place of being healed now where I don't have that visceral reaction to it as much anymore. And I feel like the process of putting all of my pain into this album really did help me move through it. And I haven't necessarily had a feeling like that with my music before. Like I used to, when I was a kid, write songs about like the posters on my wall. Like I used to write songs about like the One Direction boys and like
Hmm.
what I thought it'd be like to be their girlfriend and like stuff like that. Like that's where my source of inspiration came from for a lot of my earlier works. But this was the first that was really kind of like super autobiographical and healed me to TLDR it up.
Because I can imagine, like for someone like myself that's not a musician, like sure, we've put statuses or stories up and been vulnerable about certain things, but I think it's such a different type of vulnerability to like write that out in a song and feel those emotions and then also feel it as you're working on it, and just having it out there too. Or I know you just did a video or you did a video for it as well. So it's like having all those things and almost having to relive that and those feelings when you wrote it. Like I can't imagine that itself. I mean, going through those events. I mean, I think so many, which is why it's so important to like have you on and have these conversations because so many of us, like I sat in silence in my situation, and I didn't tell anybody. I was in such a long relationship for way longer than I needed to, like a 3.5 year. But on the outside, everybody thought everything was fine and just things like that. And until I had left, it was like, I mean, then you're in a whole new ball game too, because like when you leave, it's not just a switch off and everything's fine. You still process emotions. So I mean, I can't imagine for you what it's now like to have this out and maybe have others maybe reach out. Has anyone ever reached out to you and maybe express that they went through something similar?
Nobody has yet, but because of the sensitive nature of the topic at hand, I think that's understandable because like if especially if it's fresh, you're not in a place to be able to like dissect those feelings like talking about it. But I think the important part of like connection within music is like you don't need anybody to be there. You can listen to a song and feel those feelings and know how that feels and have that sense of catharsis within it. Like if you're just like in your room with your headphones on, like crying it out, you know what I mean? Like you don't need anybody there. It doesn't need to be a two-way communication street. So like I'm not expecting anybody to be slide up in my DMs and be like, "Oh my God, girl, like you don't know what I went through. Like
Yeah.
this, and this." Like it doesn't need to be like that for me. Like I just hope that it reaches people in those like that are sitting in that silence. So it's like a moment of like, I see you, I hear you, I know how you feel. Like, and that's what I've always wanted to give back with my music career was like to give back to music what it's given to me and like the solace in those moments of like solitude and pain that sometimes you don't have anybody else there with you until you have a song that does that for you, you know?
Oh, it was just so important. Like when I know you reached out about coming on and I listened to the song and then saw the video and it was like this is going to really hit with some people. And like you said, like not necessarily having people in your DMs or reaching out, but I think it just creates that conversation and what this is a real thing that we all go through, man or woman, and we go in relationships and I mean, again, that's our big mental health. And I mean, coming out of those relationships, it's not necessarily easy at all. It doesn't mean it's over with. How did you, and again, whatever you feel comfortable in sharing, how did you cope with after being out of that situation?
I mean, great question, because part of me is like, I think I trauma brain blocked it all out. I'm trying to think of like what the
Yeah.
aftermath was like. But the way that I'm releasing the album is in chapters. So like chapter 3 is titled The Aftermath. It's about specifically about like the after effects of going through something like that and like how I felt perceived by the people who knew us as a couple and like kind of that sense. I just know I just wasn't okay for like the next 2 years, I think, after that relationship. Like I was like crying in the grocery store every day, like because a song would come on that would remind me of like certain events or stuff like that. So like I think it's not talked about. And also to circle back to your question before, something beautiful I didn't see coming is like actually I've had a lot of men talk to me about their experiences, which is not I know that's they don't always feel like they have a safe place to open up emotionally. So I think that's a beautiful thing when I mean anytime like somebody feels like they can access a part of their emotions that they couldn't prior, especially if they don't feel like they have a safe place to. And like I think like as much as we talk about like how much it sucks to be a woman, I think it's difficult to be a man too because there's so much stigma around expressing emotions and stuff. And so yeah, that's I kind of
No.
diverted back to your first question, but
No, but that's so I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the things I've noticed like with the podcast is we've had a lot of male guests and that's something I didn't expect. And that's, just because like you said, there's such a stigma on with men in opening up. And I've had so many men come on here, one want to come on, which is like, okay, like that's amazing. But then two, like open up and say, like, yeah, we typically don't get this deep or we don't talk about our emotions, but like here we want to talk about them. And it's like, it opened my eyes a little bit too of like talking about mental health and like what men go through. It's again, yeah, it's like talk about being a woman, but like a guy, it's always like, don't cry or like just deal with it or figure it out and don't show your emotions. And it's like that's awful to hear. And I know it's that way because I have guy friends and all my friends that tell me, hey, this is how we feel about it. But it hurts my heart like to hear that like so many men suffer in that silence too.
So I think it's something to be said for us having these conversations and the importance around not hiding the lows of life and that everybody's not immune to it and that it's okay and it's human and it happens to everybody and like this shit will eat you alive if you keep it inside of yourself. So like it's important to do your own due diligence and your emotional regulation to each person as they see fit, in whatever manner they choose to do so, as long as it's not hurting anybody else.
Oh, yeah. And I tell people all the time, like, even though we have this podcast, I'm like, look, I'm a mess. I'm a hot mess with my own mental health. Like, I'm ups and downs, ups and downs. And it's like, some days I'm good and I can figure out my tools to use, whether it's like my art, like I'll do that or I go outside. But then some days I'm like, I'm just sitting on the couch and like feeling whatever it is. Like, I need to feel this. I need to sit here. And again, it's not always the best because I'm like, I should be outside. I should be doing stuff. But it's like finding whatever works for you is so key in like dealing with it because, yeah, everybody going through, whether it's a situation like you have or others, it's like you have to find something, some way to channel that pain. And I love that you were able to create this song and kind of channel your pain because I know in a post, you were saying that if you can kind of dance through your pain and do that. And I think it's so I saw somebody write about that too, that being a creative has helped them. So do you think, I mean, you've kind of already answered it, but kind of like being a creative do you think it really gave you more outlets to deal with the situation than say if you weren't a musician and you weren't able to put pen to paper?
I think it helps me come to terms with, like, come to peace with the situation more because I'm able to, like, kind of transmute something that was so awful for me and, like, be able to put a more positive spin on it and be like, okay, like, the proceeds from the merch from this album are all gonna go to domestic violence shelters and, like, the emotional impact. And, like, so being able to take something that was so negative and, like, put some positives into it and make it turn it into something beautiful is, like, really, really irreplaceable to me, truly.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna link everything too, so everybody can one find the song, but also I think that's amazing that you're doing that because I think domestic violence is just something that I think people don't realize how many of us around them have experienced it or are still experiencing it. And I just think that's so wonderful that you're wanting to donate proceeds to that because yeah, people need that support. And that's incredible. You're able to do
And
that.
like on a petty note, I'm like, it's the karma my ex deserves. Like he actually used to make fun of a bunch of like domestic violence victims and stuff, and I just thought that was awful. So I'm like, well, he's gonna hate this album coming out, so like, why don't we make it hate like him hate it even more and like do
Yeah.
good for the people like that have suffered at the hands of people like him.
Oh my
All
gosh.
shade, all
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah. I mean, and you also have, so you have, I know a single coming out very soon. Is it this
hmm
week in like a
Yeah,
day or
this
two?
Wednesday,
Yeah.
October. Wow, what month is it? October
Yep.
23rd. So that one I'm stoked on. I had my friend Thurston, who I've known forever. He's a local musician here in Denver as well, and he makes amazing music that everybody should go check out. I got him to be in his video vixen era for this, which I'm stoked on.
Oh,
So yeah, I
that's
actually I this was a crazy idea on my end, but I really wanted to lean into like the storytelling aspect of this album, and so I've tried to make it a point to make a video for every song. It's been a very difficult challenge. I'm only like 3 songs out of 12 deep, like the videos. But it's something I'm working on and hopefully I can see into fruition, knock on wood. Like I said, I'm only getting started with the videos still, so we'll see if all 12 end up with a song, but that's my goal.
yeah, no, when I saw that, I was like, oh, but this is great because by the time this comes out, I'm like, the single will be out. And I think that's so great to like also create a concept record because I love concept records because I
Me too.
think it's such an experience too to listen and have that and to kind of take that journey through you, maybe in a different, obviously, maybe in a different way or maybe not, but able to sit down and actually like enjoy a record because I think we live in such a singles time. So to like have that, like I'm looking forward to that because concept records, I think, are so, so great to have.
And it's very like anti-capitalist and ethos for me too, just because like you said, like the singles economy, like I think music and capitalism really shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't go hand in hand as much as there's like music and then there's the music business. And I think too much focus on this can really start to bleed into the other side and it shouldn't have that effect. But I think so many people create in this realm with this in mind and like yes, I understand wanting to have the best like business approach for your music. It is your product, but if you're creating everything with this capitalistic gains in mind, with this ego philosophy of like I want to be famous, like I'm gonna make singles that are like I just the whole like mindset surrounding production right now is really kind of irking me, and I see it in a lot of like huge artists I like that I'm like, you had one hit single and you've spent the next three albums trying to replicate that same single. Like it's losing artistic integrity for me, and that's why it was so important for me to like do it as an album because like you hear left and right like, oh, don't release an album, it's not like people don't have the attention span for it, and I'm like, I will not dumb down my creative output for the consumption of the general masses. You know what I mean? It's never been
Yeah.
about that for me, and I just think it cheapens it.
That's why I was excited to hear that. And it was like, or when artists themselves have said that, like, this is what we're gonna do too, because it's like, again, like I get most people, they're, they're scrolling TikTok or they're scrolling whatever and their attention span. But there's people like me or like you or like other people that want that. There is an audience for it. So
Yeah, people still appreciate music. It's not, we don't need to fit it into a bubble to fit into social media. Like, it's not, the
no.
social media is just a tool. It's not the music entirely in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah, social media. I've tried to figure it out where I'm like, I gave up on that where I used to in the beginning, where I'm like, oh, if I post this reel, maybe it'll pull people to the podcast. Okay. So I would get like, so many views or likes. And I'm like, but this is like so stupid. This is just me looking and like, writing a thing and putting the right song. And I'm like, that's not me. That's not what I do it for. And it's like, even in that way, where it's like, it's just the tool. But yeah, I'm like, I'm like, I post and whatever happens, happens. And that's it because social media is like, I don't know. I don't get it. I'm like, I don't get
It's an
it.
uphill battle, and honestly, I think they prey on everybody's like desire to go viral and this and that. And I think like you pour so much money into these things just chasing smoke and mirrors. Like it's like, okay, so you got 1 million views on like a video, but did it bring any followers to your page? Did anybody actually connect with it on a deep level? Is that building a connection with somebody, or is it just like something that pads your ego that makes you feel like, oh, I did good, I had a like viral video? Like it's like, what are our priorities, what are we chasing? It's like something like social media, you have to be so intentional about how you're approaching it, you know?
We've had, I had like a couple PR agencies reach out because they're like, oh, I like your podcast. But like and they're really nice and they'll send an artist or two for us to listen to. And it's great. But then what I've noticed is if we don't create like the perfect reel for them, or we don't create that social media look that they want in the bigger reels that are kind of like with the cool fonts or like whatever it is, it's like they're like, all right, we're out. We'll see ya. Like, and it's like that's not the game I want to play. I want to post and like and connect with people. Like that's for me my social media, but I can't imagine as an artist as you trying to get your music out there and have people connect, because for me it's like whatever I post, like that's life. But for someone like you're creating this art that you want to connect with people and you want to be seen.
Yeah, I just have to maintain the belief that like the people that are meant to see it will see it, and like it's not about reach, it's about impact, and to not put too much stock or care into these things.
No. No, it's yeah. I'm like, I gave up on that. In the beginning, sure, I was like, oh, that's so cool, like this many people. And now I'm like, yeah, no, the impact and the people that reach out in a DM or something and are like, hey, that's really helped me. And I like that there's a space for mental health and people are talking about mental health. I'm like, that means more than any like any view, any, share or repost.
Yeah,
That to
seriously,
me, like
it's such
real.
like vanity metrics.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm over that. And something we too love to ask, just because it kind of, I guess, in a way, we hope it helps someone if they want to try something for their mental health. So for you, obviously music is big in your mental health, but is there anything or any other tool or anything you use, whether it's journaling, exercising, meditation, like anything you use in your mental health that when everything maybe is a little hard and the waters are rough, so to speak, like what do you do in your own mental health to help it?
It depends, because, like, as much as I can look back on my life and my struggles with mental health, then I know the things that have helped it. Like, I'm a big, like, yoga person, and I think really diving into, like, yogic philosophy and the, like, even, like, Buddhist, like, theology and idea of, like, non-attachment and, like, philosophies on life. That's one thing that overall has helped a lot and, like, has helped me, like, restructure the way I look at myself and the world and how I interact with it. That's one thing that's definitely helped, but it's such a like fluctuating thing throughout my life that like things that used to work don't always work anymore for me, and like it's having to evolve and find what works for me in like a different context. I'm not the same person I was when I was 20. Like the way that I handled my emotions and dealt with things when I was 20 is not how I would handle things now. I have a fully developed frontal cortex now. Like I can feel the difference of like my perception and like reactivity to things. So and it's not like a one size fits all thing. Even when you think you find something that works, I find that it's you're still gonna have moments where you're like hitting a low and like you feel like you can't get out of it. And I think the only way to process that is to like work your way through it and like throw a bunch of shit at the wall until something sticks. And like, because it's so different situationally, like in each moment that I felt like I had a low that like I had to change my approach with each time, and it's almost like a learning process, and like in the same like in the way that like you learn the most from your mistakes. It's been that type of thing of what is best for me, how have I been able to like regulate my emotions and myself in the past, and what have I done before that was out of a reactionary state that didn't help me, and how do I avoid that?
Oh, that's so important. Like, that's something I'm like, again, I'm glad you're saying that because usually when we ask that question, and that's not like to put, because I get it, like, it's such a like open-ended question where it's like, well, what tools do you use? Oh, I use this. But like thinking like what hasn't worked or like working, like I think about when I was in my 20s, right? And what I used to do. No way would that work now in my 30s. Like just where I've developed and grown, just life experiences, life stuff that happens to you. And I think that's such an important thing to say because it can so change. Like me right now, it's going outside and getting that sunlight, but like in my
Need love some
20s,
vitamin D.
yeah, I'm like, am I in my 20, like in my 20s, did I ever take that seriously or do that? What worked for me? No, like it, that's so important to have. And like for me to even think about because it's like, yeah, no. And even day to day, it's different and every situation is different.
Yeah, I like to think of my remedies as like a toolbox that I can refer to in times of need. Like there's tools like breathing and like learning how to regulate my like parasympathetic system helps in a moment of like acute anxiety, whereas like if I'm sad and lying in bed, that's not necessarily going to help. You know what I mean? Like so it's like it's a situational thing, definitely, but learning and just like self-awareness as a concept and as a tool is very like important too, being able to step outside of yourself and look at you objectively and being like, okay, I'm triggered because of this past thing that happened in my life. It's not even necessarily about the situation at hand, but how can I go back to like 15-year-old me who that was who the core wound happened to, and how can I tend to her and what does she need and the reminders that she needs, and how can I incorporate that into who I am now? And like I think it's taking a like holistic view of who you've been throughout your life and knowing that your present situation is like we tend to play out these patterns in our lives. So to be able to look back retrospectively and incorporate that, I think has been another thing that's helped a lot.
I'm like, who was on? Oh, they're gonna kill me. But who was on here and somebody said, maybe I think it was Jordan Swasey, the singer, and I had him on, and he kind of said what you just said in a similar way, where his therapist was saying that, there's different versions of you, the little you or the mother you, or like all these different trying to be that person and think about those other versions of you that maybe when either the trauma or certain things in your mental health and kind of taking that and yeah, just what you just said like popped into my head where I'm like someone else has said something similar and that's something that like I definitely have to like listen to and I needed to hear because there's like it's such an important thing in our mental health.
Yeah, I love that I'm on the same page as this dude's therapist because I'm like, I haven't been to a therapist in like 10 years,
Yes.
so
Oh my gosh,
I'm glad
yeah.
my self-help reading is working.
Yes, because he Yes, I wanna say it was Jordan Swaste, and he was someone that I was like, "Wow," like, that just hit, and when you just said that, I was like, "Yeah, that's something," like, again, I said that day, like, "I need to listen to this, I need to hear this," and, like, just life happened, but hearing it now from you today, it's like, I really do need to implement things like that because it's so important to think about those things and think about like, a lot of my trauma and everything started in my 20s. So now being in my 30s, I'm unpacking all that and doing that. And it's like, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, but thinking of that like 22-year-old self and all that and what they needed and what maybe I can do now that I didn't do then. So thank you for that. That's like amazing. Like even for me to hear.
Good, good, good. Well, the way that I've kind of incorporated it, like especially with this last like couple relationships I've been in, like I was celibate for 7 years before I met my last two ex-boyfriends, and before that I was like a child, and like that's where a lot of that like core wounding happened, and I recognized like the abandonment wounds that stemmed from like being groomed as a teenager and like him faking his death to stop talking to me. Like that was the core
Ooh,
situation that was like behind all of these other relationships I had decades after, and I don't think we realize as adults how much our past impacts us and how we're still playing out those same subconscious patterns. And it's almost like the universe keeps giving us those same lessons to see if we have adapted to that and been able to clock that yet and be able to act differently and being like, no, I'm operating out of this wound. Like, I actually need you to get the fuck out of my life. But like, it's
yeah.
my abandonment wound that's being like, no, stay. I don't care that you're awful and you're ruining my life. Like,
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Like that. Yeah, hearing that, I'm like, that is a totally me because I have an abandonment wounds, and even like being in a healthy relationship now, it's like unpacking
Same.
that.
Yeah.
Unpacking that, that's not easy. Like even in the start of my healthy relationship, there was so much to unpack, and I credit my fiance for sticking with me because dealing with those abandonment wounds and my mental health, it was like I probably shouldn't have been in a relationship at that point, but I'm so thankful because I was able to unpack it with the right person to be there for me because, yeah, there were too many things that I was taking from those. And yeah, those young relationships in my life, like I still have things that come up from that time that I think a lot of us do forget, like, or don't think. They think, oh, that was so long ago. That's okay, and
Like that's when our brains were forming, and that's when we were intaking patterns and understanding our perception of how the world works. It's just not necessarily always accurate. Like just because one person did this to you doesn't mean that's the core idea of what love is, for example, or anything like that. But
oh,
yeah, sometimes you like, here's the thing too, is like you could be single and feel like you're healed and feel like you're fine, but then you get into a relationship with somebody and yourself is mirrored back to you. Like everything you feel about the people around you is a reflection of you internally. Like especially when you deal with like narcissists and stuff, like the things that they criticize people for are the things conversely that they're the most insecure about. And so everything, the way we feel about people is merely a projection. Like obviously people do their own thing and like that has their own meaning, but our perception of it is rooted so much in like our perception of ourselves and what we accept in ourselves and don't accept and that sort of thing.
like that's so great. I'm like, that's got to be the one of the reels. I'm like, that has to be one of my reels. I'm like, just people need to hear that. Like, and it's so, and I wish in my past relationship when I was with a very narcissistic man that like I could have been like seeing that, right? Like that's the perception of themselves and what they're doing and in certain things and recognizing that because I didn't even know like just the times, like, I didn't even know what gaslighting was until I was out of that relationship, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I was gaslit this whole time, so many different times." I wish I woulda had that knowledge now and told myself, like, "Hey, like, whatever you have to do, get out of it." I mean, easier said than done, but, like, just so many things that, like, weren't normal that I was normalizing and like, "Oh, that's okay, that's fine. it's been that way. It's
Trying to do
alright."
that as women too. I think it's so easy to internalize the idea of a failure of relationship being anything on us as if like we like other people's actions don't define us, but the blame kind of ends up on us. It's like, oh, you failed your relationship, you couldn't keep a man, like and like maybe that man wasn't worth keeping, you know? Like why do we have to take the weight of these things?
Yeah. Oh, that was me too. At that point, it was like it was a 3.5 year thing where it was like and everybody loved him. Everybody loved him. So it was like,
Typical narcissist, like makes
right?
everybody love them, is like awful and shady behind closed doors.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. And people, I'm like, if you even knew, like our life would be like, I'd be in a corner sitting there while, they're doing whatever. I'm like, but on paper, so to speak, we were great. And people were like, I remember when I finally did leave that relationship and realized, hey, like this is normal, things like this. And people are like, oh, really, that's 3.5 years you're going to toss away and this and that. And, you don't know and you can work through it. And I was like, no, like you don't get it. And I think that's why it's so important, like anyone in a relationship, like if you realize things that like I didn't, what gaslighting was or being with a narcissist that like maybe not today or tomorrow or whenever, but you can leave when you can. And when you have, I mean, if you think you can't, you really can. And everyone's situation is different. There's safety issues. There's so many different things that go into that. And I think just realizing that it can get better because I never thought it did. And the once that person was removed from my life, I finally was like, okay, like I can live again. I can be me again. I don't have to worry about this person gaslighting me every step of the way and, calling me crazy and all these things that were just so horrible in a relationship and like mental health. And
Right, calling you crazy while ignoring everything they did to like push you to that point of insanity, right?
I always tell everybody, I'm like, yeah, usually when there's anyone calls someone crazy, 9 times out of 10, I always want to ask, like, what did you do? What
For
did you do to them
real.
to get them
For
to that
real.
point? What
Yeah,
did you
and why
do?
are you sitting here still trying to like spin this narrative about somebody when you were the one with your like hands dirty in the first place?
Oh, yeah, that again, that's a whole other, oh, but no, I could relate to that like so much and just like our relationships are mental health and it's like also like not even just relationship with someone but yourself and it's like I've had to really look at myself in those past relationships and been like wow like if I could just hug the 20 something year old version of myself and been like listen like you're in this and it's okay and don't blame yourself because, you were young, you were naive, you were with you thought these things, but now knowing what I know now, it's like if ever I see someone kind of going through a similar path and they're opening up to me, I'm always quick to be like, I can see these patterns and just be there for them. So that's at least for me, that's one positive, if I could say too, is I can be there for other people. And much like you with this concept record and this song, you can be there for someone else going through it. And maybe not even just a physical way, but just having someone hear that and like, hey, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of lived my life like a cautionary tale. I'm like, I never wanted to be a role model, but I feel like I'm a good example of what not to do. And I can impart to you my wisdom I've learned from my mistakes and like things I don't recommend doing. And like you're young when like you encounter these things and you don't know better and you think that's what you're supposed to be doing because of societal reasons, because of like interact like your relationship reasons, like people pushing ideals on you. But I think, yeah, circling back to like what I would tell my younger self is like make sure what you're pursuing is because you want it. I think the most pain that's come out of my life is living my life along other people's principles and like what they think is best for me. And some of those people got really skewed ideals, man. Like they don't have your best interest at heart. Like
Oh, oh my gosh. There's
being
so
young is the trenches.
oh my gosh. Oh my there's so many like takeaways. I'm like, this is my therapy session right now. So
Oh,
like, oh, this is so great. Like, and like before I let you go, I would love to know where obviously I'll have all the links, all that good stuff. But like if someone just wants to listen, where can people go hear Pray for Rain? I'm assuming on all the major platforms, all
yeah,
that
I
good stuff.
my artist name is just Chisa, so Chisa. That's where all my music is under. My social media is like Chisa Marie on some stuff. Just depends on like, when I got it back in 2011 if I could secure the handle or not. But most of the music itself is under Chisa, and I can't believe this is already over. How long have we even been talking?
And all right, guys, that was my conversation with Chisa Marie. I really, again, admire Chisa so much for this conversation. I think it's wonderful about her donating funds to domestic violence shelters. I think it's so amazing that she's using her platform like that. And I think all while showing the importance of music, the importance of mental health. So I really hope you enjoyed Chisa. If this was your first time hearing her, if this was your second time, you see what I mean? She is just so wonderful and so amazing. As for our show, again, if you are loving this show, make sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. Follow us on all social medias, all links below. It truly goes a long way, as well as if you really love this show, leave a positive rating or a review. Little things like that are the best and easiest way you can support our show and shows like ours. As for our show, you will hear a new conversation next week with a band I have been trying to get on here for a very long time. We made it happen and I appreciate it. And I cannot wait to share that one as well. So stay tuned for that because, again, yeah, I cannot wait. And I hope you guys have a great week, a great weekend. And yeah, I'll see you next time. All right. Bye, guys.